You're listening to the Body Contouring Academy's Proven Profits podcast, where you'll learn simple, actionable strategies from real-world, wildly successful body contouring professionals to help you generate more revenue, realize the profits you deserve, and create the life you desire. I'm Shannon Schimmel.
And I'm Kay Overly, and we're your hosts of the Proven Profits podcast. Welcome back to the Body Contouring Academy's Proven Profits podcast. I'm Kay. Shannon's right here alongside me, and today in episode 18, we're going to show you how to use 5 plain-spoken techniques to set realistic expectations so you make your patients feel ecstatic about their results.
All patients come into a consultation or treatment with expectations or unrealistic expectations. The problem is they may not make all their expectations clear to us. If this happens, if the patient has expectations she has not expressed and you have not detected, and if you treat her, there's a likelihood that she will not be happy with her results. It's nearly impossible to make patients with false beliefs or unrealistic expectations happy if you treat them. And conversely, setting realistic expectations from the start leads to high patient satisfaction.
Okay, so how do we manage patient expectations? How can we uncover as much as possible? And how do we set clear expectations? Well, we're going to take a deep dive into all of this in this episode. We'll examine several factors that can cause a disconnect between us as providers and our patients. And we're going to point out the ways that patients and providers don't think the same way at all.
We'll give you 5 plain-spoken steps that you must use to, number 1, set clear, manageable expectations. Number 2, demolish the risk of patient misunderstandings. And number 3, make your patients feel exceedingly happy with their results. So let's get started with our 5 steps.
Step 1, you're going to need to satisfy the patient's emotional experience. And this one's easier to understand when you think of it this way. As providers, we're participating right alongside the patient in that consultation and treatment. But our experience of the consultation and treatment is quite different from that of our patients. Let's evaluate how we look at results and how our patients feel about results. As providers, we view whether a treatment is a success in terms of clinical outcomes. So, a provider might say, "Yes, just look at that difference." The patients, on the other hand, are much more likely to place importance on the emotional aspect of their care, whether the results they achieved made them feel the way they thought they would. Therefore, it is so important at all your follow-up appointments to emphasize the reduction with an emotion-provoking statement and get excited about it. So, say something like, "Wow, look at that hourglass shape you have now." That's much better than, "Wow, look at that difference," right? So with this statement, the patient's going to share your enthusiasm, and then she'll feel really good about herself and be thrilled with her results.
Step 2, avoid information overload. This one can be a biggie. As providers, we know body contouring like the back of our hand, but patients don't. In fact, many patients may even come in to see you full of misinformation. When you think about everything we discuss and cover during a consultation and treatment, it's a wonder patients understand as much as they do. You do need to provide the patient with a thorough understanding of the treatment and break it up when you can. Number 1, to avoid overloading the patient with too much information at once, provide a depth of information on your website. Ask the patient to review this information prior to her appointment. And number 2, you can also drip information by email to the patient before the appointment or even after the appointment. So send the patient emails on the days leading up to her appointments and perhaps following her appointments. You'll be sure to set manageable expectations when you're providing the information to the patient and the patient actually digests that information.
Step 3, use lay communication. So, have you ever been guilty of something like this? You're talking to a patient and you start off saying, "So, with the laser lipolysis, the membranes of your adipocytes are damaged, leading to the initiation of apoptosis." They're like, "Say what?" Let's translate in lay terms. With sculpture, the laser destroys your fat cells and causes fat cell death. Your reduction is permanent. That's much better, right? So you cannot assume your patient understands medical jargon or shop talk, even your patients who are nurses and physicians. So try to avoid medical technology. Use lay terms whenever you can. And another thing, remember that every patient is different and tailor your discussion to fit that particular patient. You can see you cannot set expectations if the patient doesn't understand what you're saying, so make sure they do with the language you use.
Step 4 is check the patient's understanding. How do you know if the patient is understanding what you say? A good way to check what the patient has understood is to ask the patient. You could use this after your discussion about expected treatment results. You could use questions like, "What kind of reduction are you looking for?" Or, "What kind of change would you be happy with?" Also, give the patient plenty of opportunities to ask questions. You can learn a lot from the questions asked.
Step 5, show empathy. We've talked about empathy before, and you can be sure we'll talk about it again because it's a critical behavior that all providers need to perfect. You know, research has shown that effective communication between providers and patients significantly improves patient outcomes and the patient's perception of their outcomes. So, in your communication, use your patient's name, give the patient time to process the information you discuss. Take time to lay out those key points, use eye contact, and encourage questions and interaction. Also remember there's 2 forms of communication, verbal and nonverbal. So don't forget about body language. Look at your patient when you speak and when they speak. Smile. Nod your head to show you hear and understand. You know, when providers show empathy, patients feel much more free to open up, and you'll elicit more information about their expectations.
Put these 5 steps into practice now, and you'll consistently set realistic expectations for your patients. Take each of these 5 steps and come up with a plan to make it a part of your team's process. Then start using it as soon as possible so you can be sure every one of your patients feels happy with their results.
But what happens when some patients are unhappy, even though you did everything right? Could it be there are some patients you shouldn't treat? Stay tuned because that's what we're going to explore in our next episode when we discuss unselecting patients.
Better yet, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. And that's it for today. Bye for now from Shannon and Kay at the Body Contouring Academy's Proven Profits Podcast.